I wanted to explain a statement I made at the last commissioner meeting about the way we govern ourselves here in Nye County. And I'm going to play the video in a little bit. But first, I just sort of wanted to explain what I mean when I say that we don't govern ourselves fully here in Nye County. There's something called home rule. And what that is that it gives a local jurisdiction the ability to completely govern themselves. And without this, we really are just slaves to the state. We're really just a part of state government. And that's what we are here in Nye County because we haven't achieved a certain status called home rule. Now, what that means practically speaking and why I'm talking to you about it is that commissioners have to basically renew our government whenever the state wants us to do this. So we have these deadlines. And you may see this if you pay attention, but you probably don't. But if you pay attention to these meetings and you hear terminology such as DTAX and little acronyms and things that people in government use, that's really just an explanation for the state having us on this leash where we have to do certain things. I was introduced to this a few months ago, just a few months after taking office, with forget the name of it, PSST funds, which is basically a way that the state allows us to keep sales tax, or at least part of sales tax, for our own people buying stuff in our own county to support first responders. So we have to beg the state to allow us to do this. The idea that this is either not a big deal or not a problem or not true is rooted in sort of a Democrat command and control economy. So you'll find that people who don't like what I'm saying right now, and there will be those people, they probably are Democrats at one point or probably have Democrat-leaning ways of looking at things. Me, I am a freedom-based person. I want control as close to voters as possible. Voters decide who represent them, and those people that are elected should have as much control over local government as possible. Democrats don't believe that. Democrats think that there's some mystical sort of authoritarian gods at the state and federal level that have our best interests, and we're too stupid to figure out what those are. So that's why you'll see some controversy out of what I'm saying, even though it seems relatively benign, which it is. So let me show you I'll talk to you about it when we get back. I'm going to show you the video of me at the meeting. I want to warn you, I went very quickly. I spoke very quickly because I had no intention of this being anything but just a statement that was read into the record that I could publish so that it could be read. But I guess it's important to hear it. So I'm going to play it. I'm talking very quickly. I'm sorry about that. But I'm going to play it, and we'll come back and I'll explain what I said.
Nye County Resolution Number 2025-18, resolution directing the levy of the tax rate required for fiscal year 2025 and 2026. And I would just like to add that this is just a ratification of the tax rate that we do every year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I just wanted to explain my vote on this. What we have with this item is a requirement by the state legislature. We operate at the pleasure of this upper governing body. The state of Nevada may pass a law to control every aspect of our local governing, our salaries, our number of elected officials, whether or not all elected positions exist, and only with their approval may we have a yearly budget. They expect us to take time every year to repass things like this when they don't even have the courtesy to fix clearly ineffective and outdated laws that affect us. For example, according to the state, Pahrump may have only a police department with officers who earn $250 a month from 1967. This is not only insulting but lazy on the part of our legislature. The state legislature is all-powerful and need not address things like this. They may rewrite all governing rules over counties, cities, and towns, and even change the state constitution. They have powers over everything. This begs the question, why would such a powerful organization as the state of Nevada need us to pass a tax on our own people? The law that has been pointed to as a requirement uses the word shall. In 2005, U.S. Supreme Court determined in the Castle Rock ruling that the word shall does not create a mandatory duty by government. But we don't have a question about the state government's request. We just pass it, and maybe we ought to. I don't see an expiration date on the last property tax law passed right here, and so why does it have to be passed again and again? Why am I expected to explain voting for a new tax And that's exactly what this is on the people I promised not to enact a new tax on. I do not want to be part of a validation of such a system. We cannot change the way we tax without their permission. We must essentially review our entire government every year because they don't trust us and keep a reserve balance that they approve of. We pay money for financial spies that call themselves auditors because they don't trust us. We had to even beg to keep sales tax revenue to keep our first responders funded just a few months ago. We were treated like a teenager spending money in a dorm room while away on college. Of course, we fought a war over this a couple hundred years ago when the House of Burgesses demanded that colonists pass laws that support the king, only to make it seem as if colonists wanted to do it. But the king retained veto power and controlled everything. Until they allow us at least something called home rule, which is the ability to govern ourselves generally without their oversight, I say this: if the state legislature wants a tax on our property, they can do it themselves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, so I have the statement here, how I wrote it, and I want to explain sort of paragraph by paragraph what I meant by what I said. So let me start with the requirement by the state legislature. So the state law says that we have to do certain things. We have to pass a brand new property tax every year, or whatever it says. I haven't read it, but periodically we have to pass a brand new tax. We have to do this. This is a requirement. We have no choice in the matter. So I'm just pointing that out. Then I go and I talk about how we operate at the pleasure of the state of Nevada to pass laws that control every aspect of our local governing, our salaries, number of elected officials, whether or not the positions exist. This is very true. State law decides whether or not we have these things. Then I go on to talk about how we have to pass things every year in accordance with state law, which is true, undisputed. Then I talk about something that the state does to us in Pahrump here. They have not changed a law from the 1960s. It says we can have a police force, but only 7 people for $250 a month. Which to me is insulting, and I feel like if they're going to be insulting to us, well, maybe we ought to be a little insulting back to them. Then I talk about how they're all powerful and they can rewrite all of the governing rules and all the everything. There was a question about, I said that they could change the state constitution, and usually there's something called a constitutional convention. I'm going to look it up because I didn't actually do this. But I find it hard to believe that the state of Nevada does not control the Constitution. Yeah, so there's something. Whoever doesn't think that the state of Nevada controls the Constitution, they need to go onto your Google search and type Constitutional Convention Nevada. Then I went on to talk about how the state of Nevada is all powerful, which is indisputably true. Then I said something about the word shall, and this is important to my vote. And I voted no on this, by the way. And what the vote was to force us to pass this property tax according to the state law. Oh, you've got to do it every year. And so in the law, it says the county shall pass this law. I pointed out that in 2005, the U.S. Supreme Court said in this Castle Rock case that the word shall does not create what's called a mandatory duty by government. Now, it's not directly related. No law is directly related. If law was all directly related, then the courts could just shut down forever because everything's already been decided. But that's not the case. So if the U.S. Supreme Court decided in 2005 that the word shall does not create a federal mandatory duty, then there's at least a question of whether the word shall here in the state of Nevada, which I learned in grade school that the word shall is the same in every state. So basically what you need to know is the word shall has been, and there's not just the Castle Rock ruling, there's a bunch of rulings that say if you use the word shall, be careful because it doesn't necessarily mean must. And so I pointed that out. I also pointed out that we don't have an expiration date on this property tax that we passed the last time. Why do we have to keep passing it? What happens if we don't? I find it hard to believe that we're not going to get that tax revenue. And then I said, why am I expected to explain voting for a new tax? Because I campaigned against that. I campaigned on no new taxes. So it's funny to me that we have this autonomy to do what we want that's been granted to us by the state of Nevada as elected officials, caretaking for a county. And we can vote yes or no on things. We have that freedom. At least I think we have that freedom. Some would argue we don't, by the way, especially on this, which is very interesting to me. So why not take it away, I guess, is the question. If we don't have the freedom to vote no, why even bring it up for a vote? It's just interesting to me. And because I'm a person who asks questions like why when it comes to authority, I decided that I was not going to lie to the people who put me in District 3 Commission seat by voting for a new tax when I campaigned on no new taxes. I said I wouldn't vote for a new tax, and here I sit. I have not voted for a new tax. And that doesn't make me the most popular among the bureaucracy of the county government. I can promise you that. But I represent some of them, but I'm a person of my word. I said I wasn't going to do it, and here I am not doing it. And then I finally wrap it up by saying I don't want to be part of a validation of a system that runs this way. And these are all true things. The state makes us pay for what's called an auditor to sort of spy on us and report back to the state. It doesn't feel very free. It doesn't feel like we're in control of anything when we're doing all these things. So do you want to call it a protest vote by voting no? Maybe. What would have happened if we all voted no? We don't really know. But there are many instances in the history of this country where we don't really know until people don't do something. That's how the system's supposed to work. That's why we have that freedom. So I wrapped it up by saying if the state legislature wants a tax on our property, they can do it themselves, which is true. If they want to call a special session, whatever they want to call it, come in, pass a tax on our people because they're demanding it, and they do it, they have the authority to do that. So if they want to make our lives difficult, we can return the favor. And I guess that's what I'm advocating for until they fix some of the systems that and some of the controls they put on us, which I think are unfair. They also demand certain balances where we hold tax money in an account. I call that overtaxation. I don't think that's a good government. To tax people more than we need to run government and then have it just sit there in a big fund, that's not good government to me. And I've been complaining about this since at least 2000. I believe 2000 is when I first learned about what was called a rainy day fund back then, and it's changed names. Be careful of any government operation that changes its names many times over the years. They usually do that because it's unpopular or it's not right or it's morally wrong. I'm not saying it's morally wrong to keep extra money, but I'll let you be the decider of whether or not you think you should be overtaxed by government so that they can have an extra buffer, an extra cushion in case an emergency pops up. I personally think, because of the way I was raised, I'd rather have people have that in their own personal bank account than the government. I'd rather people were more comfortable than the government. I don't necessarily want a government that's comfortable. I'll let you decide the answer to that. But go ahead and subscribe to my website, ianbayne.com. It's IANBAYNE.com for updates, things like this, explanations like this about government. And I appreciate you watching.